day and welcome to Quilting with Don 2024 episode 4. Continuing to work on Bursting Forth, which has been an interesting project so far. So to date what I've done is sewn the core of the top here. Now I'm going to start adding the borders. There's going to be 2 layers or 2 sets of borders. The first set of borders is going to integrate with these outlying points using this 3 reds and 1 black strip set that I have already made. So the concept is in between each point and the corner is going to be a piece of that red strip set. And then it'll join up with the next piece over here, and so on. Then some measuring and using a bit of math. Okay, I'll do it this way. I notice, for example, let's go here, that roughly the running length of the bottom of the trapezoidal shape I'm going to cut out of the strips is, it's going to be less than 7 inches, but let's say 7 inches. Also, math says that the piece on the top here is going to be 6 inches wider, so it should be 13 inches. Well, a strip set is over 42 inches. So if I cut 3 sections that are 14 inches long, I should be able then to shape those to be able to fit into each one of these 12 places in between the triangle points. So that is what I'm going to do. Take each strip set, cut it into 3 trapezoids, and I'll try to be smart about this so that I can have leftover triangles in between the trapezoidal cutouts. And then maybe that'll give me something I can use to add to the outside of this in the next set of borders. So that's what we're doing. Here is, well, you can see most of the first strip I'm going to cut up. So the idea is, like I mentioned, to cut this into 3 pieces, or 3 trapezoids. So I've already trimmed off on each end the selvage edges. So then what I've done is I've pinned this strip into 3 sections, equal length, both just a little over 14 inches each. Here, here, and then just to the left here. So now what I'm going to do is going to start cutting 30-degree trapezoids. So when I say 30 degree, I mean here's a vertical line, 30 degrees, and I'm going to cut 30 degrees that way, and at the other end, cut 30 degrees that way. That's what the math says you need. So this ruler has 45, 30, and 60 degree marks. So as I mentioned, I need a 30 degree trapezoid here. Well, to get that I actually use the 60 degree line on the ruler, but it's all good. I mean, it just depends on how you want to orient the cutting edge. But I know that this is 30 degrees. And I've taken the 30 degree, well rather in this case the 60 degree line, and run it along the bottom of the fabric. And everything else looks pretty square. I mean, the fabric will have a bit of give anyway, but that was my first cut. And you'll notice that I line it up so that the cut goes through just at the point there, just nibbling it a bit, so I'm not wasting too much fabric. Then I repeat the process here so that I get a 30 degree cut here. Lining up for the second cut so you can see how I'm going to get the trapezoid. It took me a bit of fussing to figure out which line to use on the triangle so I can get a nice straight edge all the way across. And now I'm actually on the 30 degree line on this ruler. Lining up the edges with the fabric. Looks pretty good. That should be darn close to 30 degrees. And we cut it. There we go. There's my first trapezoid. Now I'm just going to make 2 more of these. Okay, I just realized I was missing the obvious. So I used the fancy ruler here for my 30 or 60 degrees. But wouldn't it be easier if there was such a thing as a 60 degree triangle? Carolyn has one. So instead of getting fussy with the big ruler, I'm just going to use this triangle to cut my triangles. Here is what one section of the inner border looks like. All I did is take 2 of the trapezoids and then sew into the middle of them one of the triangles of the outlying triangles. Simple as that. This is now going to go on along with the other 5 of them on the outer on the border. One little adjustment I had to make, and it turns out that it's very important to have exactly 6 inches top to bottom here. I followed the instructions on the kit and it told me to do skinny 1/4 inches. That was a mistake. I should have just stuck with 1/4 inches. Maybe I just don't know what a skinny 1/4 is, because it ended up that the width of the strips, some of these strips, was a little more than the 6 inches I wanted. It was 6 1/8, 6 1/16. So all I did is trim them down to 6 inches by lopping off a little bit of the black. Visually you won't notice it anyway, but therefore it allowed the triangles to align very nicely with this edge, which will then get sewn onto the existing top. And then on the outer edge here, once those are all sewn together, is going to be the yellow and black border as my second layer. I've sewn all 6 inner border sections, the ones with the red stripes and the black. So here's what it looks like now, before I've sewn them on together. Now I think I've mentioned in the past, what I'm going to do is miter each of these 6 corners. I'm going to use the same mitering technique I used for the borders on Eye of Sauron. And I'll show you how I do it, but it's in a nutshell. You sew each section onto the straight edge here, on a straight edge, lining up obviously the points for the triangles. And then you fold the quilt over, the top over on itself, good to good, and then the tails here will line up, and you sew them at the appropriate angle, which should be 30 degrees. Go from there. Right. I'm going to explain how I do the mitered corners on this inner border. I've already pinned a layer, one of the borders in place. Just like before, where you pin the points, you pin to the edge to make sure that the edges line up. You can see one border already here that I've already sewn on. Okay, so this is the other one. Now, here's the main part. It's like, in fact, this is just like doing a Y seam. So those that are dreading Y seams, you're not going to like mitered corners. But the trick is to be able to start and stop in the right places, both along here, and then when you sew the actual mitered seam. So to do this is very cool. I like this method, and this is a modified version of what I learned online. All you do is you fold back this flap till you get the fabric in line with the line that's going to extend for the mitered corner. Okay, so it's going to go out to here, and then you fold it, finger press it, make a mark, and then what I did afterwards, I went along with a chalk pencil and I marked it like this. All right, and you do the same thing on the other side. You fold it over, line it up at the right place, finger press it, and then mark it. And you can see I've done that already. So when you're sewing along the edge here, you're going to sew to that point, and to that point, and no farther. And when you sew to it, then you backstitch to make sure that it doesn't unravel. Same here. Or if you start, anyway, the point is you backstitch on both ends. Right, going to sew this edge that I just talked about, and you might find of interest that with this 99K sewing machine, it's a wonderful standalone unit, but when it comes to sewing larger things like this top where I'm at now, there's not enough extra tongue or platform to keep things nice and even. So all I did is I added this, one of Carolyn's cookbooks, La Rousse Gastronomique. It just happens to be a good thickness to be more or less flush with the plate of the machine. So, it works. Now I'm going to sew this baby. The hardest part is lining it up so that you start sewing at the mark I was just telling you about. I think we got it. So down, just hand cranking it now, couple stitches, reverse, couple stitches, and then go. So now I'm sewing to the other mark, my hand, and there, that should do it. Back up a couple, lift the needle, remove, and we'll see how we did. Alright, so here's how the magic happens. Now, I've sewn, you just saw me sew this edge here, and I did check it, and everything lines up nicely, and you can see the two tails here ready to be sewn together, and you're saying to yourself, well, how the heck am I going to do that? Well, here's where it's just like Y seams, but with a twist. Because you're doing a mitered corner, you know exactly what the degrees or where the cut should be. So all you do, I'm going to fold this quilt top along this line here, which is for goods to goods, which is where the miter will be when it extends. So you just fold it over like that. Now I'm going to obviously do this a little better than what I'm showing you here. I'm just giving you the idea. Then there's the fussy work involved. But you notice what I'm doing here now is I'm lining up the two tails so that this top edge is even. That guarantees that things will line up nicely when you sew them. And the other thing that you do is when you're folding it is you make sure that all your folds are going away from where you're going to sew. And look at there. You can see where I sew it up on this seam, it goes to there. Well, that is where I'm going to continue the seam that goes up in this direction. All right, and how do I do that? I take my ruler, this is so cool, and you line up the 30-degree mark on the top edge like this. See, I'm lining it up now on the top edge of the outer edge of the border, and you slide it along there till you get to where you're going to start your sewing, which I can see is right there. So, again, I'm going to do fussy work to make sure this is absolutely right. But then what you do is you take your chalk pencil or some marking method and you mark the line here, okay? Now, I haven't chosen the best part of the ruler because it doesn't go to the very edge. I will, but the point is you mark it like that and then you sew it from along the mark from there to just where it meets the other seams. And this will be mirrored, this seam will be mirrored on the other side if I've done it right and stop right there on the other side. You get a perfect Y. That's the theory. And here's their final result. Came out pretty good. This is the seam I just did. It's close. It's not perfect, but it's close enough, I think, for the purposes of this quilt. So you can see that the point is right there, and it's a nice even line as it goes out. Just a bit of a jump there. It's the same for the stripes. They line up mostly, and this one I can chalk up to that all my strips run exactly the same width. So when I lined it up along the edge here, I should have pinned each of these joints as well. I didn't. So far I didn't need to. This one looks like I could have. I may resew it.
A little while ago, Carolyn got given another antique sewing machine. And I'm going to unbox it for you. And then you'll see what it is. It's very cool. It's made in 1933 by Singer. Anyone guess what it is yet? Okay. Here we go. Ready? Da 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 da! It's a Singer 99K, ready for this? Hand crank sewing machine. No electricity at all. And it works. I had to order a new plate, bobbin cover, then adjusted the tensions, and I've already been sewing on it. Check it out. This works great. It works. So that's very cool. Already wound a bobbin with it. The bobbin winder is a little different than the electric one, but it works. The stitch length, there's no numbers, you have to go by feel, but it works. And here's this tension, again, no numbers, but I just cranked it till I got the right tension setting. Isn't that cool?
Side by side, all right? Similar layout, they both have their own base. They both actually have the same throat space. I think the same shape of housing, and so on. Bobbin winders are different, little. Here's the electric one, okay? And here's the hand crank, starting with the bobbin winder, a bit different. But as I zoom in here, look at the difference. There's more attention to detail in the decals and the gold work. It's just a cooler, older machine. If you look at the front header, the head plate on it here, it's quite intricate. When you compare it to the electric one, about 23 years later to be specific. Because the 99K electric was built in 56, and this hand crank, according to the serial number, was built in 33. I have finished the first layer of borders, so I'll step aside and show you, and then I'll show you a couple more things. So there we are. That looks pretty good. Certainly when it gets quilted, it'll tighten up some of the puckering that's going on because of the different way the fabrics were sewn. And I'll probably end up starching it a bit too, again, help things just tighten up and shrink. But it's overall, I've stretched it out and it's pretty good. The sides are pretty true and I like it. What you also see to the two sides here, you can see there, we can also see here, these are the leftover triangle bits that I created when I made the trapezoids. So there's potential to use these either in this quilt or elsewhere. I mean, they would make nice little round stuffed things, for example. I'm not sure yet. I am leaning towards just doing the regular border that I'd already planned. So on that topic, I'm making a choice on the two yellows, one of the two yellows I want to use. So there's one that I have in my stash, not Carolyn's, mine. Here's the other.
Now, I'll stand back and you have a look at those two. I know which one I'm leaning towards, and I'll tell you. I'm leaning towards, okay, there's two philosophies, and I even showed these to Carolyn. I'll stand here now. On this side is a lighter, simpler yellow that makes the whole top pop, and this yellow would more be like a background setting, lifting the rest of the top out to your eyes. This one is brighter and actually blends in more with the overall tone qualities of the top, so it would become part of the top as opposed to a background. If you know me, I like color, I like brightness, so I'm going to use this one. This is my choice. And then of course the last piece of the puzzle then is to add the black border. Not that thickness, but that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to use the same method I sewed the inner border, in the sense that I'm going to sew the yellow and black strips together into width of fabric pieces, then cut them to the right size to do the outer border. There's not going to be much waste because the outer border is going to be roughly, it's going to be roughly about 35-36 inches. Ta-da! So you've seen it. The top is done. I have decided to not add anything more. I like it just the way it is. So excited. Oh, it came out great. Some precision sewing. I am a mitered corner god. Well, I'm pretty good at them anyway. And it's, mitered corners are just like Y seams with a bit of a twist, like I said. So by the time I was done these, I didn't have to do a single unsew. But, full disclosure, I did have to cut one more strip of yellow and one more strip of black because I did a miscut on the very first strip. When I was sewing it on, I didn't leave enough tails on the other side. I said, oh, I'm going to save some fabric. And I trimmed it to just a bit beyond the corner here and there. Well, of course, no, that's not going to work because it has to go further because of the angle. So that was an oops moment, but that's it. Luckily, I had enough of the yellow and the black to cut another 2 strips and get her done. Like I said, no unsews. So one more chance to look at it. Isn't that great? It's definitely going to take a bit of starch because there's some wrinkles in the fabric, but that's okay. So those who know me know I like to toast myself and the quilt because this brings to a close this episode. So I'm now having one of my favorite beers from L'Heureux en Belgique, in Belgium. This is from the Saint-Fuyien brewery. And I think I've shown this to you before in another video, but it's their Grand Cru. I love this beer. It tastes like the regular beer on steroids. And it's fabulous. So, hope you enjoyed this episode of, I was going to say drinking beer with Dawn. No. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Quilting with Dawn. I really enjoyed getting this top finished. And now begins the quilting fun. And I've got some ideas for this that you'll get in the next episode. So, happy quilting. Try this again. So happy quilting, happy sewing. Remember, don't drink and sew. What could go wrong? Cheers. This is so good.